Hi, I'm Shashank Bhargav, and you're listening to Three Things, the Indian Express news show. On Monday, Father Stan Swamy, the 83-year-old Jesuit priest and tribal rights activist, passed away in a private hospital in Mumbai. Swamy had been arrested by the National Investigation Agency and was being investigated for his alleged involvement in the Elgar Parishad case. During his time in judicial custody, his health deteriorated. And even though he applied for bail multiple times under medical grounds, the court denied him that privilege. Several questions have now been raised about the case that was made out against him, including the supposed evidence that the NIA has used in the case. It is important to note that Swamy had been booked under UAPA, that is the Unlawful Activities Prevention Act, which seeks to designate individuals as terrorists and deals in acts that intend to threaten or are likely to threaten the unity, integrity, security, and sovereignty of India. So what was this case that was made out against him? What evidence did the NIA look at? And on what basis was his bail pleas rejected? In this episode, to understand this case from the beginning and the questions it raises about our judicial system, we talked to Indian Express's Sadaf Modak, who has been reporting on the Elgar Parishad conspiracy for the newspaper. Sadaf, before we talk about the case, could you briefly talk about Stan Swamy himself? Who was he?
Father Stan Swamy was an 84-year-old Jesuit priest, and he was a tribal rights activist who was based in Jharkhand, Ranchi, and he had over 3 decades of work done on various issues of the Adivasi communities there, including on land, about forest, their labor rights. In more recent years, he worked on the issue of arrests of young Adivasis who spoke on issues of land and forest rights and who were spent a long time as under trials in prisons of Jharkhand. He had filed a public interest litigation on that aspect.
Okay, so when we talk about Stan Swamy, one thing we know is that the National Investigation Agency, that is the NIA, had been after him. They had alleged that he was part of this Elgar Parishad conspiracy. That was the main reason why first the Pune police had interrogated him in 2018, 2019, and then when the government changed in Maharashtra, the NIA took over this case. So could you explain what this Elgar Parishad conspiracy is that Stan Swamy was accused for being involved in?
So on 31st of December 2017, there was an event held at Shaniwar Wada in Pune called the Elgar Parishad. On the next day, lakhs of Dalits and many other communities had assembled at Bhima Koregaon, this place which saw a battle between the Peshwas and the British. And they were commemorating the 200th anniversary of the battle. At that time, there was attacks on the people who were going to the Vijay Stambh, and this had led to an FIR, which was filed against 2 Hindutva leaders. One was Milind Dekbote and one was Sambhaji Bide. After over a week, another FIR was filed by the Pune police, which claimed that the incident on 1st of January 2018 was as a result of speeches given at the Elgar Parishad event. And later on, the Pune police said that it was a much larger conspiracy involving banned organization CPI Maoists. And they claimed that a lot of people were involved in the conspiracy. Many others, like Stan Swamy, who did not even attend the Elgar Parishad event or the Bhima Koregaon commemoration, were also said to have been involved in this conspiracy, which was eventually said to be a conspiracy to overthrow the government. So that is largely the case.
Okay, so we are clear about the fact that Stan Swamy wasn't there in the Elgar Parishad meeting, and he wasn't even there during the Bhima Koregaon, which is mainly what the case is about. So what evidence did the NIA have to establish that he had some kind of connection with this case?
So the NIA has claimed that there were some emails. During the bail arguments, they sort of spoke about emails exchanged between Father Stan Swamy and his co-accused. They also said that he had been chosen as the face of the banned organization after many others were arrested, and they claimed that he was an active member who was furthering the activities of the organization through his own NGO that he had founded in Ranchi. They also claimed that they had seized some documents and letters from him, which they showed that he was part of the larger conspiracy of the case. Father Stan Swamy, of course, denied all these allegations. He said that the letters that he was shown at the time of his interrogation in 2020 were all, they did not have a sender, they did not have a receiver, there was no signature in it, no date on it. So he said they easily sort of could be planted as evidence. He raised the issue of planting of evidence on digital devices, and that is one issue that is now coming up before the High Court after defense advocates in the case had sent the electronic devices of a co-accused Rona Wilson. An independent organization has given a report stating that there was malware inserted in his laptop.
All right, so many people have now talked about these very letters that don't have a name of a sender, don't have the name of a receiver. They say that these letters would probably not stand in court if they are challenged. Do these arguments have any teeth to them that this supposed evidence won't stand scrutiny in court?
Unfortunately, we'll never know whether, at least in the case of Stan Swamy, whether the evidence was enough to convict him or whether it would stand the scrutiny of a criminal trial, because we'll not see the end of the trial for, at least in respect of the allegations against him. So the NIA had presented some of these facts before the special court when Father Stan Swamy had filed a bail application on merits based on the evidence in the charge sheet. The court then said that without getting into the quality of the evidence, prima facie, there was a case which showed that he was involved and therefore had rejected his bail application at that time. His appeal against the order is pending before the High Court.
Okay, so you have these letters, these emails that NIA claims are evidence against Stan Swamy. And the court, while they have not looked into it, say that on the face of it, something seems off. And this is something that Stan Swamy is obviously refuting and saying that they could have easily been planted. So as NIA is investigating this case, this conspiracy, when do they arrest Stan Swamy?
So he was arrested on October 8th, 2020. This was after he was searched twice by the Pune police in 2018 and 2019. And again, between July and August last year, he was questioned by the NIA and eventually he was asked to come before the Mumbai headquarters of the NIA. At that time, since it was peak pandemic, he had requested for his questioning to happen over video conferencing. And he himself had released a video where he said that Jharkhand state's guidelines said that elderly people should not travel. He had a history of various ailments and he requested them that you can do my further investigation over VC. But that was refused and he was arrested on October 8th last year and brought to Mumbai the next day.
Right, and he, of course, was arrested under the stringent and draconian Unlawful Activities Prevention Act, that is the UAPA Act. But you mentioned his health condition. What kind of ailments was he suffering from?
Among the health conditions that he suffered from, A was, of course, he was an 84-year-old man, so there were age-related issues that he was facing. He was in an advanced stage of Parkinson's disease, which made his hands shake a lot, so he could not do basic activities on his own. He also had spondylitis and a history of heart ailments. He was short of hearing. So yeah, these were the main health issues that he was suffering from already before his arrest.
And in the video he made right before he is arrested, he even mentions these health conditions, right?
Right. In that video, I think it's about an 8-minute video where he speaks about the allegations against him. He speaks about how and why he thinks that the allegations were false. He speaks of the quality of evidence against him. He also has spoken of why he thinks he was targeted. And he said that the case against him wasn't unique and he felt that others, including authors, poets, student activists, and others, lawyers, were all being targeted in a patterned manner across the country.
What is happening to me is not something unique happening to me alone. It's a broader process that is taking place all over the country. We are all aware how prominent intellectuals, lawyers, writers, poets, activists, student leaders, they are all put into jail just because they have expressed their dissent or raised questions about the ruling powers of India. So we are part of the process. As in a way, I am happy to be part of this process because I'm not a silent spectator, but I'm part of it, part of the game, and ready to pay the price, whatever be it.
So Sadaf, when he is arrested, he is basically put under judicial custody. And just so that we have a better grasp on this, judicial custody is when you're put in jail, but your trial is still pending, right? This is not a conviction, obviously, because your trial is still pending. And this is the position that Stan Swamy was in. So could you talk a bit about judicial custody, and also how long can someone like Stan Swamy be put in judicial custody for?
So whenever someone is arrested, when they are produced before the court, the investigating agency can ask for their custody for a particular period of time. In cases of Unlawful Activities Prevention Act was invoked against Father Stan Swamy, that period can be up to 30 days, but otherwise it usually is up to 2 weeks. And at that time, the investigating agencies have to convince the court that they have enough grounds to seek the custody. They could say that an investigation is in progress, or they want to particularly find out something from the accused by keeping him in custody. Once that period is over, the person is sent in judicial custody. What it means is that the person is in custody of the court. And jails actually work as a space where people who are sent to judicial custody are kept. In cases like these, bail becomes very difficult because of the invocation of UAPA. Father Stan Swamy, because of his age, had sought bail after the pandemic. Because after the pandemic, there was a Supreme Court judgment which said that prisons should be decongested, and each state had signed a high-powered committee to suggest which prisoners could be released. Because Father Stan Swamy had UAPA invoked against him, he could not be considered for bail, is what the court said at that time. And in such cases, usually what happens is, because of the stringent act, under trials usually end up till the end of the trial. So if they are acquitted, say even if it takes 10 years or if it takes fewer years or more years, they would most likely be in prison till the end of the trial.
And the other thing that you mentioned in your piece is that the NIA, while putting him under judicial custody, did not seek his custody for interrogation. Could you elaborate on that?
So usually when a person is arrested, like I said, the police, the investigating agency, usually arrest someone when they want to investigate some bit that they've not found otherwise. So this could be that, say, for instance, they arrest one person and they question him thoroughly and they say that they've got some leads and the investigation progresses. With Father Stan Swamy, what happened was, though they told him that they want to bring him to Mumbai and put him through further investigation, on the day that he was produced, he was taken to court and the NIA did not seek his custody. And in fact, they filed a charge sheet against him and 7 others on the same day, which in a way shows that there's a completion of investigation to a certain point. Of course, they can say that they will want to continue investigation. But in this particular case, it's a little peculiar that you arrest someone and do not take their custody.
Now, after he is arrested, we know that he applied for bail a number of times. He had, of course, raised concerns about his health and the pandemic even before his arrest. His first bail plea you mentioned was rejected. What happened in the other pleas that he had filed?
So after that one bail application that he filed immediately after his arrest, which was rejected, he filed another in November, which was decided in March. This was, like I said, on merits based on the evidence in the charge sheet. That was also rejected. The NIA made submissions like the emails found or the letters found. They said that there were documents which showed that words like comrade or Lal Salam was used. And the prosecutor said that this showed that he was part of the CPI Maoists, because he claimed that this was usually used by them. So this was the kind of evidence that was submitted at that time. And the court said that despite his old age and sickness, the larger interest of the community outweighed these aspects and denied him bail. Following that, he had filed appeals on both the medical bail being rejected and the regular bail being rejected before the High Court. The medical bail was being heard when he passed away.
And during this time in jail, at one point he had also requested for a sipper and straw because he had Parkinson's. He said he could not hold a glass of water and drink from it without a sipper and straw. Could you talk about what happened when he made that particular request?
So Father Stan Swamy had said that when he was arrested on October 8th, his colleagues had packed him a bag with his clothes and a few other items. And because he already was facing this issue of his tremors in his hands, they had initially brought him a steel sipper and a straw. When he was arrested and brought to Mumbai, they packed that with him as well. A month after his arrest, he made an application through his lawyers that he wanted his sipper and straw to be returned to him. The application was made before the court with a response sought from NIA, because the NIA was the one which had arrested him. The court gave the NIA around 20 days to respond. And after that, when the NIA responded, they said that they had checked the seizures made after his arrest and they did not have his sipper and straw. Therefore, the court rejected the application because the application sought for the NIA to return the straw and sipper. And the moment the NIA said that we do not have his straw and sipper, that sort of became infructuous, is what the court said. Following that, the court asked the lawyers to file another application so that the straw and sipper can be provided to him. But by then there was so much outrage over the fact that something as basic as a straw and a sipper cannot be given to an under trial who's facing such difficulty in eating and drinking on his own, that the jail authorities then submitted to the State Human Rights Commission, which had sought a response from them that they have provided him with a straw and a sipper and a few other essential items as required by him.
And so as he's spending more and more time in jail, what toll is this taking on his health?
So prison officials had told me at that time that since his admission in prison, he was kept in the hospital ward of the prison and at all times needed someone to be around him so that they could help him with the most basic of chores. The last time that he came before the court was on May 21st. High Court had asked for him to be produced via video conferencing, and he himself spoke about how his body had seen like a steady regression over the past several months that he had been in prison. In fact, he spoke about how when he was admitted, he could at least do a few activities on his own. He could write, he could eat on his own, he could walk, he could take a bath. And he said that all these are disappearing one after the other. And he said that now he couldn't eat by himself. He requires to be fed by a spoon. He said that while he could hear things better initially, now we could see that on that particular day of the hearing, he had to be told by the attendant in prison about what the court was asking him, what the lawyers were saying. And he said, my deterioration is more powerful than the tablets they are giving me. So, yeah.
And in the middle, he was also offered treatment in the state-run JJ hospital, but he rejected that. What were his reasons for doing that?
Right. In the same hearing, the court had said that if his condition was deteriorating so much, they offered to send him to the state-run JJ hospital. And he said that he had been taken there a couple of times. So the court had initially ordered for tests to be conducted so that they could understand what his issues were. At that time, he said he would rather suffer and possibly die very shortly if things were to go on as they were. And he requested to be sent back to Ranchi to be with his own, to quote him, instead of being sent to another hospital. He even refused to be sent to a private hospital. He just wanted to go home, is what he said.
But after this, after his health worsened further, he was put in a hospital. Could you talk about how that happened?
So after the hearing, when Father Stan Swamy said that he did not want to be shifted to the hospital, the lawyer spoke to him and he was eventually shifted to Holy Family Hospital on May 28th. And this was initially for 15 days as per the High Court order. And the court had said that he should not be sent to JJ hospital given the pandemic situation and the influx of patients at the hospital. Eventually, when he was taken to the private hospital, he was shifted to the ICU on the same night and he was put on oxygen support. A couple of days later, it was found that he had tested positive for COVID. And since then, till yesterday, the court had been hearing his medical bail plea while extending his stay at the hospital because he continued to be in the ICU.
Right, and this is what we understand led to his final days. What do we know about how those days were like?
So even while his bail plea was stated for a hearing, on Saturday, again, his lawyer told the court that he continues to be in ICU. On Sunday morning around 4:30, he suffered a cardiac arrest, and the doctors told the High Court yesterday that while they tried to resuscitate him, he never came out of consciousness after that. And on July 5th, again, yesterday, the lawyers sought an urgent hearing at around 11 a.m., seeking urgent hearing on his interim bail plea. But before it could come up for hearing, he had passed away. He passed away at around 1:24 p.m. And his hearing came up around 2:30 when the court was informed that he had passed away.
And what was the reaction of the court upon hearing that he had passed away?
Right, so the division bench, which was hearing the matter yesterday, they expressed their shock at Father Stan Swamy's passing away. They said that we had immediately allowed him to remain in the hospital of his choice and had ensured that he was shifted on the same day and he was given the treatment required. But they said that they had no words to express that he had passed away. His lawyer submitted before the court that while he had no complaints against the court or the hospital, he said that there should be an inquiry into negligence by the jail authorities as well as the NIA. He raised this point about what was the need to arrest an 83-year-old man and keep him in custody and oppose his bail constantly if his custody was not required. He also spoke about his deteriorating health in the prison and how it could have been avoided if he was either not arrested in the first place or granted bail looking at his health condition.
And just to sort of take an overview of this, here's a case where this 83-year-old man, Stan Swamy, he wasn't proven guilty of anything. There were only allegations against him, but despite that, he suffered in jail and his health deteriorated during his time there. he contracted COVID and eventually passed away. So what kind of questions does this raise about our government agencies and our criminal justice system?
I think the bigger question here also is about the invocation of UAPA. And, for instance, if maybe any person was arrested in another case which did not have UAPA or any other stringent criminal laws that we have, he probably would have been considered for bail. The rule, as per many Supreme Court judgments, is that bail should be granted in as many cases as possible and jail should be an exception. But UAPA mandates jail before any person can be granted bail easily.
And this is because the idea in UAPA is that you are effectively being treated as a terrorist, right?
Correct. Because the charges are of terrorism and issues of safety of the nation, community interest. These are the issues that are raised in a case where UAPA is invoked. So it becomes that much more difficult for a person to prove that maybe there are charges against me, but for now I can be released on bail and put to trial, considering the amount of time usually these cases take. I mean, there are cases at least in the Mumbai court, where it's been more than 10 years since people have been arrested and the trial is yet to begin. So, of course, there is a balance that is needed between the safety and security of the citizens. But in such cases where it comes to decision on bail, it is usually seen that once UAPA is invoked, even if there is lack of evidence, courts usually tend to, especially trial courts, usually tend to not grant bail easily.
Right. And of course, there is also the larger thing of the UAPA often being misused, by agencies. But right now, there are also others in the Elgar Parishad case that are in judicial custody. What do we know about their condition and what do experts, sort of suggest should be done in their cases?
On Tuesday, a statement was released by family members and relatives of persons arrested in the Elgar Parishad case, and they've raised the issue of the safety and health of the other under trials. A lot of the under trials in the case are above 50. There's 82-year-old Varavara Rao who was granted temporary bail for 6 months after his condition deteriorated. There's the Delhi University Associate Professor Hani Babu, who had to suffer a severe acute eye infection in jail before he was shifted to a hospital. Similarly, there have been constant applications filed by the family members of Sudha Bharadwaj, Shoma Singh, Surendra Gadling about prevailing health conditions they have and how it sort of makes them that much more vulnerable to obviously COVID, and also the general situation in prisons make it more vulnerable for their condition to deteriorate.
You were listening to Three Things by the Indian Express. Today's show was written and produced by me, Shashank Bhargav, and was edited and mixed by Suresh Pawar. If you like the show, then do subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. You can also recommend the show to someone you think will like it, share it with a friend or someone in your family. It's the best way for people to get to know about us. You can tweet us at Express Podcasts and write to us at podcasts@indianexpress.com.